Baltune versus CSoH, a lot of people, I think, believe in CSoH after what they've seen of him recently. But Baltune, to me, has been on another level of improvement, right? This kid, it feels like he just came out of nowhere at the start of the year. He has a legacy as an Age of Empires 1 pro player, but it wasn't until 2024 that he really started to put some weight behind those punches in 4.
Yeah, I feel like you can say that about a lot of players, though, KP. We've really seen the emergence of a lot of new names in this top 16 recently. And especially starting with Masters of Realms, we are getting some matchups and some outcomes that you normally wouldn't have expected half a year or a year ago. And I think part of this, KP, is going to be how the map draft looks like here in Masters of Realms. So you have that chaos element, you have that unpredictability element that these more of an underdog players can rely on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've seen a massive improvement from a variety of players, and it is just making the competitive scene even more competitive.
It truly is. This is what I like to see, the map pools, right? Courtesy of Surfshark, we've already got a map draft on the screen. These type of maps being injected into the rotation gives soft resets that has less of an elitist air about it, where the person who's played since day one is the master of Dry Arabia. I don't care about Dry Arabian. I think that is actually my gung-ho for this tournament. I am coming for Dry Arabia in a very aggressive fashion that I'm kind of tired of it. Right? This has been really refreshing. Sakra has delivered some incredible games, moving out, non-stop entertainment. Floodplain a little bit under-repped. Water Drake is a little bit spicy. Migration in this series, though, in particular, is where my eyeballs are magnetized right now. I feel like this is the map we've seen the least of. Like, historically, Holy Island has a lot of presence, and I think, especially in this tournament, Archipelago seems to be the #1 pick for the water category.
Yeah, when you look at those three maps, you could argue if Holy Island is a hybrid map or a water map, but pro
Oh,
players,
here we go.
most of them at least, say it is a water map. And that is probably the most established competitive map in the water category. Having said that, it's also the most classic map, and that's part of the reason why some of these players just refuse to play it. It's so straightforward, it's so figured out that you have a tough time pulling some surprises on your opponent. And, you know, then you have Archipelago or a Migration to choose from, and we've seen a lot of Archipelago. I would love to see Migration, though, because I think it's one of the most underrated maps. It is a map with a long legacy in the Age franchise, not just Age 2, but also Age 1, I do believe. And it's going to be very funny to see how it plays out in AOE 4. Remaining maps will be Socotra, Dry Arabia, Hillendale, and Kawasan. But KP, we're going to be opening this series with Dry Arabia, and we will be having a Byzantines versus Delhi matchup here.
We will, and it's kind of interesting dissecting the draft here because I love the way that CSO applied himself in these early phases. The English pick, just a strong one all around. He did have to concede the Juji. The Japanese pick was really cool though because by getting Japanese like early on, you can then lock in Delhi later. If you don't do it that way, the issue is that you kind of feel like you're just setting yourself up to get countered, as Delhi has proven itself time and time again to be the kryptonite of Japan on any land-based maps. So cool to see. Interesting that Hillendale will not have Delhi available there. So it's starting to look like CSO is probably considering Ottomans if we go that deep. It's quite funny because that's more like a Baltune-esque move at the moment. But it wouldn't surprise me if he goes for the French there. Baltune's a little bit of a funky dude for that. But, I do like that he's got Juji in there. It should be just as potent on Migration as it is on Archipelago, but only time is going to tell. But with Dry Arabia as an opener, Delhi versus Byzantines is an interesting one, Lytical. Byzantines have two ways of playing this. Hard and fast at the beginning of Feudal off the back of a Hippodrome play, or you can still play that fast castle timing that typically can overwhelm the best of armies, even the Delhi. In we go. Time to kick off the day. First series of the Sunday here. Best of 5 between CSO Baltune. Reminder that this is an elimination series. Whoever falls here falls eternal from the Master of Realms.
Indeed, spawning in on the right side with the color yellow, it's going to be Baltune with the Byzantines. And on the opposing side, CSO with the Delhi Sultanate playing as the color red. And KP, this is the first time in AOE IV history that these two meet each other. We talked about this in the pregame. Baltune is definitely a player that stepped up his game recently. Whereas for CSO, he is more of a team game player. He's been always very active in team game events, especially the ones centered around the Chinese community. But oftentimes he simply didn't sign up for these 1v1 events. He's here to show that he's here to stay, though, because this is an elimination match here in Group C.
It's interesting you mentioned the team angle, actually, because that's also somewhere that Baltune has quite a lot of experience. I've noticed this. He even had a great run with Krakeny in the 2v2 tournament. So it's kind of funny that both of them are starting to grid their head out of the team environment at around the same time. Should lead to a pretty interesting series. I think CSO has this really cool aggressive style about him. Whereas Baltune, I think the way I describe him, it's not that he's weak on the aggro, it's more that where his strength lies is a little bit more off meta. I feel like he has some very experimental builds, and he may actually be my favorite person at utilizing wolves currently.
Now, when you look at a team game player transitioning to 1v1, I think the biggest challenge is that in a 1v1 environment, all the focus is on you. You slip up, your opponent could win the game in 5 seconds. That's not so much the case for team games. You have a little buffer, you have a little security provided by your teammates. So when you switch from being a team game player to being a 1v1 player, the biggest question is whether you can overcome that constant pressure that comes from that non-stop attention.
I think like the biggest challenge is in this situation. Yeah, you're going to be like, oh, I can't believe that game didn't work out. And you know, we would have won 2 Lytical if it wasn't for that stupid noob that went 40. Oh wait, I'm in a 1v1 now. It's kind of like the in your own head. I guess it's like a double-edged sword. You're in complete control of your destiny, right? But at the same time, you're also the one to blame when it falls short. Looks like we're not going to be getting any Hippodrome play here. I'm not surprised. In the opening of the Byzantine Rise to Power, Hippodrome was a really cool answer against the Delhi. We even saw players like Puppy Paw use it to great effect against very talented players like Vortex. But since then, I think most people just accepted that Hippodrome simply doesn't offer enough.
Yeah, it's a tricky setup, KP, because when you look at the winery and when you combine the fact that you get your olive oil and you can use that on mercenaries that are very flexible for the Byzantines, I feel like it's not just a matter of Hippodrome being a little underwhelming. It's also the fact that the winery is a really good landmark. It's one of those cases where, you know, you have a clear-cut landmark that's just simply more powerful in any civilization matchup.
Yeah, I feel like we get that a lot in AOE IV, right? Because if we look on the other side right now, Tower of Victory, I've definitely never seen this landmark before.
It's funny you say that because you go back 2 years in the history of AOE 4 and you would say that about Tower of Victory. It's like, what even is that landmark? I still remember the days when B whipped out the Tower of Victory for the first time in the tournament and we were sitting there like, what even is he doing?
Yeah, it was weird in those days, right? Because I think it was a lower attack speed buff, and then the other awkward detail is that your infantry had to walk past the Tower of Victory to get buffed, right?
Yeah. So it was like super micro-heavy landmark to work with, but it has since been buffed, and it's one of the trademark landmarks for the Delhi. Something that's going to help them a lot in this feudal age combat, because you know, you are out there to take those sacred sites. You are going to be opening with Ghazi Raiders, but your eventual goal is to be very heavy on archers. So, for the time being, this is going to have a small effect on the game, but once you get to that mid-late feudal age stage, that's where Tower of Victory starts shining.
Oh yeah, it looks absolutely broken at that stage, because typically the way that this matchup plays if you play long feudal is Byzantines will go jabs, right? And at first, people thought, oh yeah, jabs are just absolutely broken, we'll just always go javelins. What they quickly realized is Delhi, when they scale up these archers with the attack speed buffer, and this is almost like, it sounds heretical to hear, archers beat javs, right? Because you simply can't keep up with the surge that comes out the Delhi base because you're slowed down by your olive oil, right? So I'm wondering if maybe Baltune wants to kind of take a more defensive format here, possibly lean into longbows, which could give him a little bit more of a defensive punch behind him, right? Like javs are great when you come out to the map, but time and time again, players have proven that they can't come out to the map in that mid game against Delhi.
The trick with javelins and the Byzantines is that you have a somewhat limited production, so you can't really fully rely on it. It's a great auxiliary unit to supplement the standard Byzantine army with, but it's also not something that you can use as your go-to unit simply because you're constrained on production.
Yeah, I think Baltune's going to hunker down here. Like, you can tell by the fact he went Limitana, he didn't even entertain the idea of going into Horsemen, which has been rising in popularity, right? Like, Byzantines have been having great success with Horseman longbow builds, but in this particular matchup, it kind of feels like a death sentence, so you inherently get shoved into this more defensive comp, and already the Limitane are a little bit stretched thin here.
I wouldn't like him playing longbows here. The thing is that playing long feudal age combat, archer v archer, is not something that you want to do with the Byzantines against the Delhi. For now, Limitani will just hold off those Ghazi Raiders, and One thing to note, KP, is that Baltune is very active adding these olive groves, so he's setting his food eco up to be a much more long-term solution. And it's also something that's going to give him a very consistent source of olive oil for the next 10 or so minutes.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised he didn't try to get into an outpost here, which has become a more popular play, right? If you think you're going to be pressured. But CSoH was a little bit slow on switching over to the archers, right? He went up to 5 Ghazi before dropping the archer range. Like, there was an opportunity here, which Baltune should be able to kind of buffer away now, right? Like, Limitane coming out. It is going to be the javelins as well. This is kind of a tricky one, right? Like, the issue with this contract is you feel a lot better about the way Lombo scale into castle. But in fairness, you know, if you're fighting into a feudal age opponent who has mass Ghazi, there are worse things to have in your arsenal than camel riders in that mid game.
That's very true. And let's not forget, the javelin throwers have a really good range, so they are actually very good when it comes to sniping off backline units or just playing defensive, still delivering some damage to these raiding Ghazi raiders. But KP, Baltune hasn't really been contesting the map, and this is something that CSoH can now use. Sanctity has finished, so now he can start moving out for those sacred sites. And I would love to see him being very aggressive with that. He knows that Baltune is sitting back, so he can just move out to the 3 sacred sites, wall them in, and start that sacred site countdown immediately.
I mean, you don't even need to wall them in. That's the beautiful thing about what Baltune has done here, is he's, like, if I'm CSoH and looking at this, I'm going, okay, you actually have no cav to go and take the flank sites. So I can very easily just not have to do this, right? It's kind of interesting to me that he's bothering. The middle one maybe you can kind of forgive because that's the closest one, but if he ends up walling in 3 sacred sites, that's really expensive in a game against the Byzantines, especially when you consider that the Byzantine economy is a little bit bonkers, right? Like, you know, you've got this system buff, which is already inflating your eco by quite a bit. And then you also have the olive oil generation. It allows you to actually compete with the Delhi. The only edge that CSoH really has right now is A, the quality of the Ghazi, and B, the production rate, right?
Yeah, to be fair, I always love when players wall in sacred sites. Sure enough, it's a big investment, but when you look at the top-level competitive AOE IV games, players are so good when it comes to sneaking out the unit and decapping those sacred sites. Now, Baltune did lose his scout, by the way, so he really doesn't have a high mobility unit to move out with. And to be fair, I feel like the middle sacred site is the only one that CSoH shouldn't have bothered walling in. That's the direction from which his units are coming anyways, so he can always reinforce this position. I would have loved him capturing these sacred sites and then walling them in on the flanks, because you can definitely see Baltune trying to slow down this process of capturing these sacred sites.
Yeah, which he's doing on the south side right now. There is a move to the cap on the north. The wall's starting to go up there, Baltune hunkering down. I mean, the reality is the Spearman Jav count is getting quite high. One issue is that initial batch of berries is running out, right? So this is a surge point where Baltune can contest for the next minute, maybe 2 on the map. If he doesn't get a fight by then, his olive generation is going to be too slow to match the archer surge. That's where you'll probably see him back up again into his base.
And when you look at his alternative sources of food, both deer packs are out of reach right now for him as the Ghazi Raiders do move in. Not enough Limitani to deal with them. Gotta say, I love this move from CSoH. He saw the Limitani moving onto the central sacred site, decided to dive on the lumberjacks. He doesn't get a single villager pick, but he causes a lot of idle time, and he also managed to damage quite a lot of those villagers.
Yeah, the Select-All army may be working against Baltune there. Keeping a few Limitani back would have actually paid dividends. The other cool thing is once you're at that stage, you can even think about contesting the Ghazi directly because of Akatoy, right? Like if you activate that defense, you get the +2 armor. All of a sudden, these villagers are actually pretty impressive frontliners.
Yeah, now, keep in mind, again, Baltune, he ran out of berries, and he doesn't have control over either deer packs or a new berry patch.
Baltune just got... He didn't decap the site there. He got aggroed by the archers. The Limitani ran around... Okay, yeah, so that's kind of awkward. You're just giving 3 more resources across to your opponent, right? Like, it's not going to be a Sacred Site win condition because of that detail, but it is extra gold for this surge point we just discussed.
Yeah, it's going to be decap, but CSoH does have the other 2 sacred sites, and the thing I love about it is that those are walled in. Sure enough, with this whole army, Baltune can decap them, but that means that he's going to have to move that army away from the middle of the map towards the flanks, and him simply sending a single unit to decap it is no longer going to work. That's why I feel like that investment into the walls is actually very much worthwhile for CSoH.
I wonder... What does Baltune want to do with this? He's holding to a lot of stone currently. Maybe he just sets up 1 or 2 outposts and starts trending towards castle. Because like that is your unlock point, right? Like it should not actually be possible to overwhelm Delhi deep in feudal. with Javelin Surge. Like it slows down way too much. So I imagine Baltune is looking for an off of this feudal age trend.
You're saying that, but I feel like CSoH's army is a little underwhelming here. Don't forget, Limitani can play with shield walls, so they're fairly resistant to arrow fire.
Wait,
Those
what?
javelins outrange the archers, and when you have 12 javelins against 21 archers, that's a setup I like for the Byzantines.
Yeah, but something weird is happening here. Look at CSoH's scholar count. He's adding in additional scholars, which you don't see very often unless it's a fast castle play.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's trying to rush technologies here, potentially blacksmith techs. I think he's also going Castle Age, but I think this might be more of a short-term solution to the lack of blacksmith upgrades. Nice little interception of villagers here. Ghazi Raiders are still running circles around Baltune's base, but Baltune has this big death ball of Limitani and Javelin Throwers, and I think that the next batch of Javelin Throwers are also coming in soon.
I'm not sure if they're going to be deadly enough, these Limitani. The archer count is quite high for CSoH. Gonna start poking in. Ghazi might be able to get an entrance here. Looks like CSoH is going to be forced to reset. I mean, the interesting thing here is Baltune has to keep posturing, right? Like, he hasn't set up an outpost to guard his Grand Winery area. So if he ever kind of falters there, it's an immediate stall on all of his income.
Yeah, in general, his left flank is very much open if you take a look at the minimap. I love how he walled off the northern side, so he only needs to focus on one side. This is kind of an important thing when you consider his army is slow moving. But now he's thinking about Castle Age when you see his resource bank, same thing for CSoH. Big difference is that Baltune is confined into his base, whereas CSoH does have all 3 sacred sites. Or, well, he's going to capture the 3rd one in a second.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's where these skulls could come to play. Like, so there's 2 possibilities. This is either House of Learning, or he's going for a 5 relic pull.
Archer, I love this little dive. It's difficult to do without losing archers to the javelin throwers, but I love how CSoH is active and just pinning his opponent inside his base. As long as he's doing this, he ensures that Baltune keeps the javelin throwers back at home, which makes it very difficult to decap those sacred sites.
Yeah, this is the outpost I was expecting to happen sooner from Baltune, right? Like, that's how he can feel safe with the amount of farms coming in. But, you know, it comes at a price of that type of delay. Sacred sites are once again locked in. CSoH is going to pull the trigger first, and we're going to find out. I imagine we are looking at a typical compound defender build here. Yeah, no House of Learning in the way, so that's confirmation. The 6 scholars should be on their way out now to those relics.
Yeah, and once you get back with those relics, I think one of the cool things that you get from those 6 scholars is that you have a very quick research rate, so you will get to your village fortresses upgrade a lot quicker. You can unlock that villager boom potential with the Delhi a lot quicker by having all these scholars out there.
We'll see if he actually dives deep. He's in a good position, but I feel like the timing is a little bit off and actually moving for those deep relics. So maybe he's going to plan to take this a bit safer. He has got one on the south side. A 4 relic pull upon immediate tech up seems very feasible here. The 5th maybe is the part he's paranoid about, as that is at the back of Baltune's base.
Yeah, but Baltune is so defensive here, and I think part of the reason why these archers are poking the eco of Baltune is because he wants to make sure that Baltune isn't contesting that northern side, and so far he's been very, very successful. I'm not the biggest fan of drawing the attention of Baltune to this area right now, but it seems to be working because at least some of the javelin throwers will fall back. He should have at least 4 relics to work with though, KP, and I think even if he can't get the 5th one, he must be happy with that setup.
Not to mention, this actually holds the sacred sites for longer, right? Because your opponent isn't moving to burn down those walls. He's going to take longer to actually try and intercept that. That gives an opportunity for CSoH to get into his premium units and potentially turn this into a sacred site victory game.
Yeah, and look at how he's active in terms of mining stone. Oh, look, Baltune actually tried to make a run for those relics. This is a very early monk play from him, but he's just going to be a little too late for this. 3 relics on the way back home for CSoH, and the 4th one is close to his base. This is at least going to be 4 relics for MKP.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that as well is look at the stone gathering. CSoH is getting ready for a keep drop, probably on the central sacred site, maybe even close enough to cover that 8k gold.
Yeah, I was about to just highlight that, KP. Like, he's been very early in terms of gathering stone, so he is going to have a keep in just a matter of seconds. And it's actually pretty big, because if Baltune isn't contesting the central sacred site, this is going to be well fortified. And oh, this must feel so sad for Baltune. He went heavy on the monks, but he's going to miss out on all but one of the relics. On the other hand, though, KP, he's extremely aggressive adding Varangians.
Yeah.
And when you look at CSoH's army, he only has 10 Ghazi Raiders. These archers are still feudal age archers. I feel like these Varangians could be a nasty surprise for CSO.
Yeah, there's actually a really big problem for CSO with this stone play, and it's why you don't often see people eager about the idea keep dropping before 60 villages. He's putting so much effort into getting the resources for a castle drop. His army is looking underwhelming right now, right? Like, we are seeing him a few minutes now in Castle Age, and yet the only castle unit he's built is a Mangonel. No men-at-arms, no crossbows, nothing else, and this gives a perfect opportunity for Baltune to try and punish.
And that Mangonel is coming in clutch, though. Nice hit on that group of javelin throwers. Ghazi Raiders will launch a counterattack, but at the same time, these javelin throwers are just butchering all these archers before the Castle Age upgrade came in.
Did we get the Akratoid back at home? Baltune should have been activating that to delay the Ghazi attack. Oh, he doesn't even know.
He's not. Actually, he's got a couple of Varangians fighting those. Oh, my lord. He's going to lose a couple of villagers, but I think he's cleaning this up, and at the same time...
return fire, though. Mango goes down. Dive's going to continue now. It's a lot of other time and also potential to take down villages. CSO now with the overboom of 1,200 stone and nothing to do with it.
Yeah, he actually has to pop a preemptive Vololo, but javelin throwers, they do outrange those archers, even the Vololo circle. So that Scholar goes down, and look at this. Now Veterancy is in for those archers, but crossbows are just now trickling in. At the same time, villagers on the stone mine are getting annihilated. KP Baltune is coming in with all the momentum in the world.
Yeah, I think CSO is scrambling at this point. Another Mango comes out into inevitable death here. Crossbows have finally been queued up, and this is the big question mark in this game. Where were they 2 minutes ago, right? You knew this was going to be a Varangian play. It has to be a Varangian play. It's pretty much textbook Byzantine moves. Yet instead, after all is said and done, yes, finally that castle's on the way, but it don't look pretty. You're already 5 eco behind. It's a defensive castle. The sacred sites are still locked in, but I don't expect that to last.
You're going to have your keep up, congratulations, but there's going to be a second wave of Varangians. This was only the first wave. You've lost all your Ghazi Raiders that were putting pressure on Baltune's eco, and once all those defending Varangians got freed up, suddenly you have this counterattack potential.
Yeah.
Village Fortresses is finishing in about 30 seconds, so there is some reboom potential for CSO, and let's not forget, he still has all 3 sacred sites. The countdown is down to 5 minutes. Baltune does need to decap one of these sacred sites because, you know, if he doesn't pay attention to this and there's a momentum swing in favor of CSO, things could get nasty.
Yeah, and the decap should be easy, right? That's what I was waiting for Baltune to reset to. Just 10 Varangians good enough. With Castle Age torch damage, a Palisade won't last long enough. I mean, CSO has some significant issues now. He has to play under pocket resources because if he tries to full farm transition here, his army will be eclipsed by over double the size, right? Like, you'll be talking about 10 crossbows defending against 30 Varangians. So, really important that he tries to sneak these flanks while Baltune's not looking.
Yeah, at least CSO still has 4 relics alongside 2 more sacred sites, even if this one is decapped. So there is a pretty respectable gold income for him. But he's down by 9 eco. Veterancy is now coming in for his troops, though.
Yeah, it's going to be more than that now because Baltune already went for a second TC. So the whole idea that Village Fortresses fixes your mistake doesn't work. We're now going to have to see that full Magano line effect, right? Like free keep drops. But I'm getting a bad feeling that all those castles will have to be dropped in his own base.
Yeah, I love that second TC from Baltune. He knows fully well that this game, in terms of economy, is going to escalate very quickly once Village Fortresses finishes for the opponent. So he wants to make sure that he's on par with his opponent in terms of economy. I also love how he's walling that far right corner. That's the corner that has both of the deer packs he spawned with. He hasn't yet touched those, so this is actually a lot of untouched food that he can work with, and it's going to be a fairly safe source of food for minutes to come.
Yeah, and the other cool thing is he can now capture those sacred sites to offset the fact he's behind on relics, right? It's like, gold, that's gold. Gold is good, right? In this type of comp, like, would it be nice to have jabs? Sure, but realistically, you're happy to move away into massive ranking at this stage. Speaking of those jabs, they find a bloody good fight here. CSO walks in with the crossbows, and the worst fight possible here. Limitane and javelins, nothing good for him to hit into.
Yeah, exactly. You're losing your precious crossbows to the javelins, and you're barely killing those Limitani with your crossbows. At the same time, raids on the north coming in as well. And these Varangians are fairly tanky, so they can just dive and start picking off villagers. Baltune now has an eco lead of 12.
Yeah, and Teardrop Shields is coming in, so those angry Vikings are going to be swinging a lot quicker soon, and that's problematic in these situations, right? Like, especially considering if Baltune starts moving past that keep, it's undefended economy. Perfect opportunity to get mad and smash hard, right? Like, Berserk on those backlines is brutal. I think it's a big part of why people feel like Varangian are OP, even though they're really not, is because they aren't just a great men-at-arms unit, they're also an incredible raider. I love this as well. What do they call the Magano line? What's my return statement on that? Just go around, right? Like he knows all the food is on the south side of the base.
Mangonel getting caught over there by the single Varangian on Berserk. Luckily, friends are there to help out. But one thing I'm looking at, KP, is that Baltune started targeting the alternative food sources of CSO. You kind of touched on this a couple of minutes ago. Oh, villagers getting caught in the crossfire here, a little overzealous by Baltune. But yeah, CSO is yet to make a big farm transition, so he needs to rely on those berries and deer packs, and that's something that Baltune is exploiting right now. Now, on the other hand, Baltune still has those walled-in deer packs, and he does have a respectable amount of olive grove set up as well. So his food eco, it's pretty much set up for a long-term game, or a long game in general.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because if you look at the scholar count, I think CSO is prepping for the inevitability that Imperial will probably come into this game. Like, you can kind of see this with Delhi players. When they go up to double digits, it's already a question mark. If they start to trend towards 20 scholars, that means Imperial Age is inevitable, right? The whole logic is with 20 scholars, you actually get your imp techs at a pretty respectable time here. And I think that's more from his paranoia that Baltune's going to force it there. With this type of map control, like, Baltune has options, right? He can either try to all-in you, or he can go for that classic strong point of imp with the Berserk, the extra movement speed on the Varangian. That's where this unit tends to kind of really reach its apex.
And the other thing, KP, is that when you have 4 relics, you don't necessarily shy away from a long game, because you know that if this game goes extremely long, you do have that advantage. Still, looking at the map, it looks like players are starting to section it off. Baltune just, casually dragging his mouse across the screen, getting the true Maginot line established here with those walls. Same thing for CSO, villager count neck and neck, both players walling up. I don't know, KP. I think it might come down to whoever is able to get to Imperial a little quicker, and that's where Delhi, being a little slow, grabbing techs could come into play as well, although you do have 12 scholars to boost your research rate.
Trebuchet saw this. Timing's awkward for CSO. I don't think it's an insta-hit.
Oh!
But he's going to have to cancel it.
Yeah, he needs to cancel that. If the villagers get pushed away, the trap can take this out and you lose all your stone.
Jabs moving in now. Villagers are going to be outed out and forced to retreat. So there you go. He cancels it out. Loses what? Probably about, say, 250 stone from that initial hit. Must have been.
Yeah, not ideal, but he still has 1,400 stone to work with. Baltune is putting pressure on his opponent, though, and his resource bank is growing a lot quicker.
Now, look at this situation. The intriguing part is Baltune, he's a really big fan of like walling the map completely across like this. The nice thing is in a game like this, he actually has a perfect trade post location if the gold does get starved out. I'm not expecting that to be a rush play, but if we go deep enough, it's definitely a possibility. It's something we don't see Byzantines do very often because their eco units, their villages are so efficient with systems. But we do have to remember that that does bring gold and olive oil into the equation for late game.
Yeah, speaking of olive oil, he's sitting on a bank of 2,000, so he's now piling up resources for Imperial, and he's going to have a lot of olive oil to work with.
Did someone say elephant time? No? Okay, just me. You ever realize that Byzantines do a lot of these unique units better than their original civs? Like, Landsnacked and Elephants, they do better than Atri and Delhi.
That's such a funny detail about
right?
Byzantines, and it's actually one of the things that makes them a very nasty late-game civ. You have the best units of some other civilizations available, plus, of course, you do have your own fancy units late game.
Yeah. Oh, wait, no, he went Silk Road, didn't he? I'm an idiot. We're going to get... Oh, God, we're going to get... No, don't go Imperial Age with Grenadiers. I got mixed up. Now I wish he'd gone Keshiks. Yeah. So here's the thing. This is why I kind of hate Silk Road with Foreign Engineering Company. I mean, the +2 armor isn't a bad idea, per se. But I do wonder if in this particular matchup, the Palatine school might be simply superior.
Interesting idea, but I feel like the Foreign Engineering Company is the fancy landmark that players would prefer to play with. But for now, Baltune kind of takes a step back from that Imperial Age up, and he's just going to try to launch an assault. He does get repulsed by these Springolds, though, so I feel like this might be the time when he pulls the trigger on Imperial.
Needs to be careful. Javelins, they actually can count Springolds, remember. That never got fixed from what I saw. It's been a while since I've seen them getting sniped. You remember we had it in the previous tournament where I think there was one game where a guy lost all of his Springolds to a handful of Javelins. Totally reasonable and balanced. Yeah, we're resetting. We're definitely going into Imp here. I'm wondering, actually, can we check the neutral trade post? Because like that might inform a foreign engineering company choice as well. Nah, I don't care about that one. I mean, if Baltune builds on that one, I'm impressed. The one next to Baltune's base. All right, yeah, we're going Palatine School. There's nothing there to be excited about. I mean, I guess you could get Sire Bolims. Do you want some Sire Bolims, Litter? No, no? Okay. No one does.
Now, CSoH's thinking about the push here, and, you know, Baltune needs to be careful. He doesn't want to take a fight before Imperial, so this is the moment where he might be hesitant to age up. He's actually sitting on an insane amount of gold, KP. He's been just essentially taking all the gold available on the map. He's sitting on 5,000, despite not even having the majority of the relics. Just goes to show how aggressive he was, taking all those gold mines that were available.
So you're saying it's Palatine School into mass cataphracts? I mean, I don't know what else you need 5,000 gold for at this stage.
I think it might just be a matter of him being a little too busy microing his units, and he did good micro here in this fight. Picked off a couple of siege weapons, most importantly the Mangonel as well. And there's the foreign engineering company coming in, KP. Love this defensive keep though. The Mangonel is gone, no traps on the other side, and now the Varangians are jumping on this force.
Yeah, and CSoH is standing his ground, which is the worst possible thing you can do here. Finally realized that it starts to back up. Now, the Palace of the Sultan isn't going to come in too quickly, and even once it's in, we've got, what, 12 scholars? So the research rates aren't going to be out of this world. Meanwhile, on the Byzantine side, it's polar opposite, right? Like, this is a Civ that has Dialecticus. We should have almost level 5 System at this stage, right? We're on level 4. So his unlock times on Unitechs, on elite upgrades, is going to be drastically far ahead of the Delhi here.
Yeah, and you know what else is far ahead, KP? Access to gold. Both of the large gold mines are currently in Baltune's domain. He's actually taking the first one in the middle of the map, and just to the south of it, we have the second large gold mine that he walled in. So, as much as CSoH does have 4 relics and a sacred site, his access to mineable gold is quite limited.
Can I'm just gonna get this off my chest. Yes, 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 check that gold vein to the south side. Baltune's doing something that I think is underrated. Byzantine players do not do very often. The one that you've got Baltune on, he's building Raxes outside of his base. That I don't know if you guys know this, but you can actually do that as a Byzantine player. You are allowed to build them away from systems, although it's less optimal. What it gives him is reinforcements into the fight quicker.
A little side note here with this keep, by the way, KP. The boiling oil is actually being poured on the walls, so it allowed the infantry to jump the keep without the boiling oil actually hitting them. Now it retargeted the infantry, and, you know, it's still one of the more lackluster upgrades to these keeps. Still does a little damage.
CSoH marching in. He's going for a full hand cannoneer switch. God.
Oh my lord, he's throwing away his whole army here, KP. He's trying to trade it off before the upgrades came in, but this is a horrendous trade. Archers and crossbows against javelins. You're fighting into a unit that hard counters yours.
But he has hand cannoneers on the way, Lidicor. Right? So no, okay. Yeah, this is bad. This is pretty rough.
This is so bad. Like, it would have been better to fight against Imperial Age Varangians with this. I'm not gonna lie, but even with that trade, it was just an underwhelming trade, and it shows in the destroyed value. KP 14,000 to 12,000. We have to take that with a little grain of salt because it's a little weird with mercenaries and whatnot.
Wait, what? No,
but still, I mean, efficiency was lacking there for CSoH.
Why is he queued up Grenadiers?
Why not?
I could list you many reasons why not. I think I have like a list of notes submitted to the devs on why not. It must be a misclick. I think it's got to be a misclick here. Like, you just stick javelins, right? Because javelins actually get a nice damage bump at this stage in the game with the precision training. It gives them the +3 damage, so that's a sizable bump.
He's queuing more. He had 2 in queue, now he's got 3.
Wait, but why?
On the other side, though, we do have elephants coming, KP. We haven't really seen them so far, but elephants are on the way from CSoH.
Yeah, but that's an even bigger why. Because, like, javelins count as the elephants. Grenadiers don't.
Oh, my. Upgrades are coming in now for CSoH, though. He's got 16 scholars to work with. And, I mean, he already has hand cannons on those elephants. One thing that's still a little concerning for him is that he's got no access to those large gold mines, so it's not just him not having access to it, it's more about the fact that Baltune has so much gold to work with, despite not having the majority of the relics.
Okay, I think I figured it out, Lidicor. Alright, just like, unshackle yourself the burden of Age of Empires 4. Just imagine these statements and think which would be more impactful. I throw a javelin at an elephant, or I throw a grenade at an elephant.
I mean, I think you know the answer to that.
We're gonna find out. Get your pineapples ready, boys. Baltune, he's got more grenadiers on the way. I'm wondering, like, CSO, if he can actually get Ghazi's fully upgraded with hand cannoneers, his comp will look better. I mean, a big part of that is because his opponent's building grenadiers, but his comp will be better.
Yeah, those hand cannoneers are doing a really good work over here. Mangonel support is coming in clutch as well, and KP, most of those javelins disappeared from this fight. And when you look at CSO's army, he still has 20+ hand cannoneers. All of those javelins just disappeared way too quickly, and now Baltune is lacking a hard counter to those hand cannoneers.
Keep in mind, they aren't fully broken yet, right? Like, they haven't got Zeal. I don't think they've got the gunpowder tech yet, right? But what's making them seem broken isn't just, hey, it's hand cannoneer. It's the Tower of Victory effect. The 20% increased attack speed is huge here. The other thing that's really underrated with the Deli, most civs, when they overplay their hand cannoneer hand, they're dead, right? With the Deli, you press one button, and it's almost like you're playing Company of Heroes with a retreat button, right? Because the forced march.
Yeah, look at this choke point fight. Now, I mean, Limitani, even if you turn on your shield wall, it's not going to be enough against those hand cannoneers. Varangians is an interesting topic, though, KP, because, I mean, with the extra attack buff turned on for the Varangians, those hand cannoneers do a lot more overkill damage, so in theory, you should be more efficient against them than with the standard Varangians.
I think it depends. Like, when you layer Limitane and Varangian, it's quite nice. But, like, am I the only one now looking at the comp Baltune is selected and thinking, wouldn't a Palatine school have been better here? Right? Like, what has he actually got out of the foreign engineering company? I guess +3 on the jabs isn't too bad. But compare that to all of a sudden an extra 25% in the Varangian count and Limitane count, right? Like, I don't know. I think... And the interesting part is I used to think the Palatine school was overrated. I think Palatine school is at the opposite end now, where a lot of people just instinctively click foreign engineering company without thinking about what they want to build.
This keep must stand for CSO, though. He's coming in with 2 clutch Ghazi Raiders to the north, trying to snipe down one of those 2 bombards. Oh, elephants.
The bombard, it should be able to deal with this. The elephants are at least going to delay this a bit. I mean, the other interesting thought here is maybe just get a camel from the Byzantines, right? Because you do get the camel support with foreign engineering company. It kind of feels like Baltune is a bit on autopilot. He's not fully leveraging what his civ is offering.
He's kind of running out of food, KP, and that's why his population is plummeting a little, as once again CSO is trying to snipe that one cannon that's constantly bombarding that keep. This keep is so vital for CSO's survival. He brought in a Springgold now, so I think he's going to try to jump that cannon once again. This keep is barely standing.
But wait, look at that. Baltune realized, why am I building grenadiers? It's like that person who wants to date the most beautiful girl, but it's actually the best friend they had all along, right? Why are you looking for these GigaChat grenadiers when javelins have been there from the very go? They were loyal to you. They kept you alive, and still against these elephants, against these hand cannoneers. That's the unit that Baltune needs to leverage here. Not those cute-looking grenadiers. It's all about the jab boys here.
Ghazi Raiders are trickling in for CSO now, and he's started to raid the opponent's eco. At the same time, he's also towering the gold mine that Baltune is taking, not this one, but the one to the south. So he's definitely trying to cut into that access to gold that Baltune has. But at the same time, his base is still under attack, and as you kind of pointed out, once javelins make a new appearance, both these elephants and the hand cannoneers will be easy targets for them.
Yeah, I've got shutter triggers finally being queued up. But, you know, keep in mind, like, CSO's nowhere near full strength, right? Like, we've only now got Incendiary Arrows to come through soon. Zeal is going to be the big one, right? Get a few skulls on that front line, buffing those boys up. Should prove quite powerful, especially with the hand cannoneer mass.
That's a lot of Springgolds, though, something that you will need against those bombards on the other side.
No Stonewalls is kind of surprising to this point. I would have expected maybe Baltune to at least Stonewall the north side, just because his army is kind of immobile, right? He hasn't gone for a cav, and he is aware that CSO is still building Ghazis, so like flank raids could become a problem for Baltune in the next few minutes.
Yeah, and you look at the CSO's population, now he's 200 out of 200, he's banking up resources, so this is the domain where you can start sending in wave after wave of Ghazi Raiders, and just trade them off to enemy eco. In fact, I think he has a bit of an overboom here, KP. 135 villagers with 2 sacred sites and 4 relics. He simply doesn't have population space for more army.
Yeah, and that's something you could flex against Baltune right now, right? Like, he kind of needs the Limitane to frontline. Otherwise, you know, if you did have that extra flex, he'd have to split the Limitane up. They are good chasers, the Ghazi, but it means that the Varangian wouldn't be able to get those hits that you were talking about earlier. Scholars have been pulled to try and keep the elephants alive, but turns out we found the natural selection order of things here. Cannon beats elephant.
Cannon also beats the keep here, and the keep has to be repaired once again. Springles are focusing down the bomb bars, then once again, this keep is going to stand KP.
I wonder, does Baltune realize that jabs just counter Springles, right? Because the thing is, he's got the range. He just moves up a little bit here. He could wipe out the Springles. The bomb bars still live. In the end, though, still a good fight for Baltune. Look at the hand cannon account. We're now down to 8. CSo's struggling here.
Yeah, again, I feel like he has just way too many villagers. And it's not just the Vills, it's also the Scholars. He barely has population space for army. And let's not forget, he went heavy on the Springles, he's going heavy on the Mangonels and Elephants. The population efficiency of those units aren't necessarily great. You only have a handful of actual units on the field. Compare that to Baltune, who's able to swarm you with a bunch of units that only cost 1 population.
It's quite comedial that I was talking earlier about Baltune being the one to trade in this game. That would work really well, but apparently CSO is the one having to opt into it. So Delhi setting up trade. Yep, I did just say that.
Despite having 4 relics and 2 sacred sites, let's add that to the
Oh
list
god,
of things.
Please stop. Please stop right now. Leave. When a mango emplacement is better than a cannon emplacement. Oh my god.
I'm not going to lie, KP. I think it's actually a blessing
I knew you were
for
going to say
CSO
that.
to lose all those vills.
I was about to go, you did say you wanted him to have a few less villages.
Exactly. Like, sometimes losing those villagers is, like, it's actually a blessing because now he can replace them with army.
Ghazi numbers are starting to swell. And we have got a new line of Grenadiers being built up. I think if he can catch a clump of those hand cannoneers, it can work. Like, I think in the early fight, it kind of worked out, even though it looked ugly to begin with, because when the hand cannoneers retreated, they formed up and got clumped. But I feel like that's a big if. And that's after a
CSO
fight.
made a big mistake, KP. He just now started researching chemistry. He's been playing with hand cannoneers since the beginning of Imperial. Chemistry just now started coming in for him.
I just assumed he got it out of the way first. Like, when I looked up and saw the pointless text that had been queued up there, like, remember, this guy got incendiary arrows for reasons that I cannot explain because I really don't understand. Oh, I think
and look at the timer on that chemistry tech. It's going to take a couple more minutes to come in. He even lost a bunch of his scores. Look at that.
10 minutes? Oh, no.
That is so bad. That's the only upgrade you need for your hand cannoneers.
I mean, everything remaining to attack up feels like it's going to be slow here. Baltune, I'm wondering, is this where he starts to just put a permanent dent in CSO here? A guy who doesn't have the stone to repair any damage done now. A guy whose military force is very clearly outnumbered.
Yeah, it's also outgunned. Decks are lacking very badly here for CSO, and he's actually struggling with production. He's switching back into archers.
Oh, God. Well, the good
like
news
that.
is they are elite.
Bad news is that they get butchered by Varangians, and their population efficiency is horrendous for Imperial combat.
The good news is they have 20% quicker attack. Yeah, I'm running out of good news. Yes, Mango Towers are reasonable. I did just watch that.
I just want to highlight that Armored Elephants is going to be a tech that comes in quicker than Chemistry does. Despite the fact that his army is basically relying on hand cannoneers exclusively.
But those 3 elephants are going to last longer. You watch Political, he's going to get a bunch of them together, and then he's going to die. He's going to die. Hand cannoneers, there's not enough of them here. He only has 8. And the Berserk has been activated. He's going to lose the siege!
The destroyed value is up in the skies, KP. Like, obviously, again, that counter is not necessarily totally indicative, but when you look at these battlefields throughout the game, KP, you have that feeling that Baltune just took a lot more effective fights. He's taking out so many valuable pieces of equipment with this infantry.
Yeah, I feel like this elephants, they haven't had an impact for like the last 5 minutes at least. Villager pool now coming in, because we are now entering CGQE mode here. Baltune with 30 population in the siege. Oh. Grenadiers though! Oh my!
I just want to highlight that CSO went from 150 villagers to 120 in just like 5 seconds. But why on earth does he have 150 vills? I do not know.
So we can have these type of moments where it looks like he's playing human dominoes. I cannot believe that. 25 villages flop dead in an eye blink there. And Baltune now ready to push in. He still has the bombards alive. We know the castles are not sustainable anymore. He does not have enough stone on the map to keep repairing them, and that is going to be the first one to fall.
He didn't even repair them. It was like 20% HP when these bombards started firing. It just died instantly. Gauzy Raiders get repelled. Elephant gets repelled as well. And right now, you just have a bunch of archers against Varangians. Archers barely do damage to those Varangians, KP.
And me tickling. I mean, at this point, the Springles are doing more damage to the archers than the archers are doing to the Varangians. And, you know, I just really want to throw it out there that this isn't even full optimal about Baltune. Small things that are missing, right? Like, he has camels somewhere. If the camels were here, these Varangian wouldn't even take a dent. Oh my god, but Baltune, what an opening game out of him. CSoH now trying to reboom into another group of hand cannoneers. I think he has got trade going on. It looks like he's probably got about like 12 to 15 traders maximum. But gold doesn't feel like it's going to be your problem now pushing forward. Like, you still lack a front line, and that requires substantial food you're not going to have.
Yeah, now this is looking very grim for CSoH, and, you know, one thing that's kind of weird in this game for him is that he tried setting up trade. He was preparing for a long game, but he just never got there because his army was never there to protect him.
Yeah, what impresses me as well is the way that Baltune kind of read what CSoH's playstyle was here and what he wasn't leaning into. A lot of players against Delhi in this type of game would have to go full stone wall because of the Ghazi. We never saw that from CSoH. He never reached that stage where the Cav looked like they could do anything but try to support the hand cannons.
Yeah, and I feel like part of the reason why is because he had just so little population cap to work with. Yeah, elephants, Springolds, Mangonels, and 140 villagers. The best he could do was like 10 Gauzy Raiders. That's not enough to raid, not enough to provide a front line to the hand cannoneers. And I mean, now his villager count is much more reasonable, but it's too late.
Hey, you know, more population now. Let's just find a way to get that army. I mean, we do get elephants for free Lytical. I'm sure Baltune will just leave us alone for 10 minutes. No, this is pretty much over. I mean, it's even worse than it looks, folks. Remember, scholars do count as military units. So take 8 off what's remaining here. Like, Baltune fully eclipsing his opponent in his own base. And GG gets cooled.
What an opening game, KP. Really, late Imperial slugfest kind of reminds me of what we had yesterday. Just an absolutely insane day of Age of Empires, and we could be in for another one today. Baltune taking game number 1 here, and you know, this is an elimination match. This is a big one for both of these players. First time these two meet in a competitive AOE IV set, and if Baltune ends up winning this, he's going to be fairly well set up to potentially survive at the group stage even.
Yeah, it's still going to be a tough group, right? So, like, the likely outcome, so it's either going to be Lucifron or Wham versus him. We'll be seeing that winner series after this one, by the way. But, you know, I think that series, to me, Baltune still has a lot to prove to overcome Lucifron. Like, Lucifron is very tempered aggression, right? And that's where Baltune may end up falling a bit weak. But this is a good initial sign. Like, I think CSoH and Lucifron are of similar playstyles. They're very much about these kind of early tempo control type approaches. I think CSoH is maybe a little bit more leaning on the all-in side compared to Lucifron. So if Baltune's able to make this a clean sweep, we could have a very intriguing series. I think most people would say that the likely outcome in the next series is that Wham takes the win. But if Baltune is able to 3-0 here, you could even see a world in which Baltune then makes playoffs and beats Lucifron.
Yeah, I think, KP, one of the big things to look at is for Baltune, if he wins this series, he's already top 12 in this event, which would be one of his best ever performances. So for him, this win in itself is actually very, very valuable. But of course, CSoH is looking to accomplish the same thing. He's going to take us into the realm of chaos here in the Surfshark map draft. It is Socotra coming up, and we do have a matchup that we've seen a couple of times before, KP. Malians facing off against the English.
Yeah. And I used to feel like English had to go Council Hall, or at least build archery ranges and play 1 TC all in. But we actually saw yesterday Marine Lord show us away that you don't have to do that at all. I think that was the Marine Lord versus... wasn't Louis.
Louis, it was Louis.
Yeah, it was Louis, sorry. Yeah, Marine Lord versus Louis. Louis was on the Malians in that situation. He showed us a way that you can actually play the 2 TC fast castle build. So I'm curious to see if CSoH is going to lean the same way, if he was watching what his teammate was doing right or wrong in that game. Because now it's kind of flipping the other way. I do still think Malians, I'd say the top 2, if not top 3 Civ on Socotra. Like, they are a very strong pick here because they start with the gold behind their TC. which means they cannot really be blocked there at all. And also, civs that are able to remain condensed and efficient thrive a lot more in Socotra than civs that need more space, right? That's why a civ like Abbasid, for example, would feel really out of place on such a small map.
Well, it looks like we are jumping into game number 2 here, KP. 1-0 lead for Baltune as we head to Socotra.
Let's see if Baltune can get on match point early. The powerful-looking Malians here on Socotra, but although historically we've been saying Malians counter English, in the recent months it's been different. On this map, it is different. Can CSoH get a different result here to keep himself comfortable in this best-of-5 elimination series?
First time that either of these players are playing this map in the main event here at Masters of Realms, though, so there's not much of a sample when you look at their performance on this map so far. But this is a Civilization matchup that's fairly common here, KP. You touched on that in the pre-game intro. Civs that can play condensed are very valuable on a map that is itself very, very condensed. Obviously, with the English, Network of Castles buff is much more effective when you have such a confined area to fight in. And I think the big thing here is that both of these civilizations prefer to go for an infantry-heavy composition. Donsos, javelins, longbows. And those kinds of things, they thrive in a map where there is just simply no movement potential.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? The Lombos, the classic issues, you can't move. Like, Dry Arabia, why do Lombos usually feel underwhelming? Because we just go around them. I mean, that's the thing that we love about this type of maps, right? It's like it kind of gets more claustrophobic. I think we saw this for quite a while in mountain clearing as well, where English had ways of playing. It's the same reason why, for the casual audience, things like mountain clearing, it feels, oh, sorry, not mountain clearing, the mountain pass, I think is what it's called, the one with the one choke point. Feels really good to play English there, right? Because once again, your Lombos just have full reign, and there's no easy way around that. So we'll have to see if CSoH does lean into that early. The first sign is going to be the landmark choice here, right? Because I think this is a map where you can do either. But so far, I think I've exclusively seen English players going for that Abbey of Kings.
Yeah, it's something that you can utilize to get yourself a king, and it's something that can be very efficient, just harassing your opponent. It's a little difficult to exploit that advantage in mobility, but it's also something that can put a lot of pressure on your opponent early on. And especially when you play against the Malians with the English, if you go longbows, it's fairly easy to deal with that with just a handful of javelins. So maybe there is more value in having a king and that harassment potential at the beginning.
Yeah, you can still play like 1 TC all in with King. It's not the worst of ideas. I think that build is the one that's being slept on way too much. Is you basically just build 2 archer ranges, and what you end up with is the old campfire, you know, the one where you used to heal your Lombos? You now get that again, right? Because the King is the aura that provides that. In fact, I'm just looking at the way things are being set up here. With the tree lines as well, maybe a Lombo play could work. Something that has been growing in popularity is some water play here. English and Malians both have an edge in different ways there. So for the English, it's the discount that they get that allows them to get into boats quicker. Admiralty is also pretty incredible for hitting outrange towers. For the Malians, it's actually the transport ship play. But that usually, you'll only see that in matchups like, for example, against Mongols, where you might be adding in Donzos early, right? Because then you have a unit to garrison inside of a transport ship.
Mm-hmm. Ansakori versus Abbey of Kings, so fairly standard-ish opening over here for both of these players. Now, one thing I'm looking at, KP, is that your second gold mine for Baltune, it's on the more exposed side of things, so that secondary pit mine could be a reasonable target for CSoH, but the thing is that your primary gold mine is always at the back, and it's fairly close to the TC as well, so it's difficult to put pressure on that with your king.
The interesting part actually here is if you at least force an outpost investment out of the Malians, or even just a Rax commitment, right? You kind of get your TC for free, right? That's the thing that I think people found quite obnoxious about dealing with the Abbey of Kings, is it kind of feels like that king being free gives your opponent the opening straight away, right? It's reminiscent, I think, of the old Silver Tree strat, where you could just build 2 traders, and then your opponent had to invest a lot to counter those 2 traders, but you could just be doing something entirely different, like 2 TC or Fast Castle.
Exactly, and that's exactly what CSoH is going for. That king is just essentially a decoy. It's the thing that sets you up with the initiative, and it forces Baltune to make a reaction to it. But in reality, CSoH is piling up stone because he wants to play 2 town centers here.
This is really greedy from Baltune. Setting up the pit mine straight away instead of getting your hands on the Donzos already. I mean, you could maybe go jabs. I think Donzo just makes a lot more sense. Especially considering the range damage. You do hit pretty hard initially, even with the poke. Cheeky little ball attack there. It would matter if this was like France, where, any damage done to the knight actually matters.
And that's a very far away second down center for CS. So I was looking at it when the two scouts were fighting for the deer pack, and I think Baltune might actually know what's up, because there is no reason for these scouts to start taking out deer so far away if it wasn't for the fact that CSO is planning to go for a second DC. So I have a gut feeling that Baltune suspects that there is a second DC out there.
I mean, you have to, right? Like, the moment you see the king, if you don't see Lombos within 30 seconds, you know it's 2 TC. Like, you don't even have to scout that detail. So the question mark now is, like, does Baltune try to go in all feudal? Does he go for some sort of ram play? Because I think that's actually underrated here. I think Malians actually aren't that bad of a civ in feudal, but most civs in general shy away from that against English in particular because of how oppressive that attack speed is.
He's going very heavy on the cattle, though, KP, which is an interesting choice. He's also buffing up his own eco himself. I would have preferred a semi-fast castle into the Farimba garrison. I feel like that play is very underrated. And on a tight map like this, where you can win quickly, I feel like him playing a very gold-heavy game and just going all in on the Farimba garrison would actually work very well against the 2TC build.
I'll be bluntly honest with you. I don't ever believe in the Farimba anymore. It's been underperforming constantly. We've seen it even attempted in this particular matchup. It feels like you don't get enough units, even compared to a white tower build, which is just wild to say. I'm wondering how they could fix that as well. Like, maybe let you choose whether it's gold or food. I don't know if that would help that much.
It's a very tricky landmark to balance, because if you buff it too much, it is going to set the Malians up to just swarm you every single time. And to be fair, when Malians were released, that was the go-to strategy for Malians. It worked so well. It took quite some time for a cattle build to be developed, and of course, quite some balance changes between the two landmarks.
I think it's like the issue is they don't want to just make Burgrave, right? Because it just feels like it should be Burgrave, essentially, where you can just queue units up and they come out 5 times quicker. Maybe you could get cute with it, where you could use the batch production from AOE IV, which is where the way it would work is you could start the production with 1 queued, but then it would have that fixed generation point, but you could add up to 4 more units, and it wouldn't change the amount of time until they spawn, right? It would change the amount that would spawn. That would be kind of intriguing.
I absolutely hate that mechanic in AOE 3. I think that's one of the worst mechanics in AOE 3. So I'm kind of against that. But
Jeez.
I think KP, when you look at the Farimba, it's not just about the fact that you mass-produce units. It's also the fact that it only costs you gold. And the Malians usually have access to, like, let's say, 2 safe pit mines to work with on almost any maps. So you can play very all-in-ish by just sending all your villagers on gold and spamming out those units for gold. It's not like... when you play Burgrave, for instance, you need that food income, and that's something that is hard to sustain in the long run. But you have a lot of gold that you can work with early game, so you can turn that Farimba garrison into a true mass production facility easily.
It's just, I think the simple answer is make it like Burgrave, but they just don't want to do that, right? Because they want unique flavor to each landmark. It's a tough one. I mean, because at the same time, you're talking about Malians, which is a civ that fundamentally, while they're not a top 5 civ right now, the concept of what they do feels broken, right? We just mentioned English for the attack speed aura and how hard they are to dent. Well, for the Malians, it's their economy and how hard it is to dent. Like, look how much safe food he's got permanently right now. Just sitting there, that doesn't take up population, and when we get into 200 pop, doesn't affect him negatively either, right?
And
then you get Fulani, it's out of this world.
And the thing, KP, is that this is a fairly easy thing to set up in early game. CSO, in the meantime, is going castle over here. We only had some minor skirmishes between the two players. Baltune is going to be lagging behind a little with castle age timing, but he is piling up resources for that too. Yep. Yeah, I think one of the remarkable things with the cattles is that you can set this up early game when there is just little combat happening in many games. Compare that to farm transition. Oftentimes, that farm transition comes at the worst moment. Mid-castle age, you're fighting for your life, and you suddenly have to spend a bunch of wood on farms. That's terrible.
Oh yeah, but it's so much worse than that.
Yeah, here for Baltune, he's not getting pressured at all. He's more than happy spending his wood on the cattle ranches, so that by the time fights really start kicking off, he's got a very robust food economy.
But it's so much worse now when you think about it. Like the egregiousness as compared to farms. Like how much space do you take up, right? Like if you think about how much food is on that one screen versus how much you get from farms, and the fact that you're kind of making a pseudo villager, like those things are what make the Fulani play absurdly powerful right now. By the way, that white tower is Chef's Kiss. The
I
key
love it.
to Socotra is that center pass. I think I described it as like Lord of the Rings Return of the King, right? When they're actually charging into Sauron's keep, right? They're just trying to get through the pass. It's that critical of a moment. Just like in that movie, that pass is everything because if you control the center of the map, you have dictatorial flow to come and go as you choose.
Yeah, I love the positioning of that white tower and how it synergizes with the walls finished on the left side. It's not just the fact that you have the white tower in the middle, it's also that you limit the movement of your opponent. And CSoH is now going men-at-arms. It's going to be a slow unit. So him walling off his flanks ensures that he never gets distracted by counterattacks.
Yeah, and let's not also forget wood in that mid game, right? Like that's the other really critical thing here is you'd be surprised how quickly all the wood disappears from near your base. That could matter a lot for both players, right? Like if Baltune decides he wants to lean into some kind of wood base, like maybe he's thinking archers or donzos, something along those lines, that could sting him. If he wants to go siege, it's going to hurt him. And for CSoH, you know, this is a civ that loves to build longbows as you get later in the game, loves to transition to horsemen. All of a sudden, you're going to have the wood for mass farms and those unit types.
The only funny thing about these walls, KP, is that, you know, there's always that potential for someone playing cheeky and just transporting stuff behind your walls. So you're going to have to be cautious about that.
Yeah, honestly, like for the English, it's kind of underrated to just do it, right? Get 1 or 2 spring ships now, you just come around the back, you start poking at the goal, maybe you find some workers, maybe you find the second tree line. Admiralty can make it more feasible as well. We might see that a little bit down the line. For now, CSoH just needs to hunker down, right? With Sofas on the way, he needs to get better walls up than what he's got because these walls right now are designed to delay, not to halt.
Yeah, as Baltune did lose his scout, by the way, so he's quite deprived of vision. But one thing that he did is place his stables all the way to the back. So he's trying to conceal the unit that he's going for away from CSoH. I'm not sure if CSoH saw that initial Sofa. This one he definitely saw. So now he should know that Sofas are on the way. I don't think they have imported armor though, KP, so they still have a long way to go.
Yeah, and it's kind of... I wonder if it's just too predictable as well. Like, what else would you build against the English here, right? When the mass men at armies. It just kind of makes sense that you'd be going to Sofas. So might be that anticipates this. CSoH, he's already now prepping the spears.
The spears are on the way, and it's only Sofas for Baltune. He's trying to torch his way through these walls. Again, the trick play is always there to transport these Sofas behind the walls of the transport ship, but it looks like Baltune is not thinking about it just yet.
No, it's easy to kind of forget about that, right? Like, it is a side investment as well that puts you away from just getting more units. But it definitely would have served him well.
This is going to be a big relic heist, I feel. There's a relic just south.
Here, yeah. This one maybe, but the other one got yoinked already.
I don't think he knows about the tower. I think he knows about the TC, and he's just trying to yoink it. He needs to pick something up. He doesn't have any other relics accessible, so I think he's just going to kind of roll the dice on this, trying to yoink this.
Starts to march in. Spinman have been queued up by CSoH, but production has been insanely slow. I don't think he's using the white tower.
Yoink!
Okay, CSoH kind of screwed himself over here. That white tower is not producing units. There is no way. So far, just start leaking in. Will be counted there. I don't like the Baltune stop for the TC, though. This doesn't seem like a realistic objective.
It's kind of awkward. I feel like he's just trying to distract his opponent while he's taking the relic away. But now that he sees that villagers were pulled to repair the TC, he's just going to bail. At least he takes out the tower, and that's a precious tower because it does have a spring Oldham placement on it. And the Javelins are at least putting some pressure on those villagers, but they never managed to kill one. It's only one worker kill so far for Baltune here as he dives into the spears with the Sofas.
Yeah, crossbows also coming in as well. Like, this is a rough fight right now for Baltune. He's going into Mustafadi, but the tough part is spears can beat Mustafadi, especially when you consider that attack speed aura the English have.
It's only a handful of Mustafadi as well on this screen. He's got some more coming in. He does get the scout though, so now it's CSoH with limited vision as well.
Yeah, this is mass flood strat. We see this all the time from Marlins. This is where Mustafadi really have seen their resurgence, is the classic Zerg build has come again. Sofas are just a nice detail, right? Like sometimes you might see Warrior Scouts just for clump numbers, but it makes a lot of sense to go Sofas here due to the armor clad detail, right? Like otherwise you just won't have a unit to really get through those men-at-arms quick enough.
Villagers are getting caught in the crossfire now, KP, and
Can we take the
6
white
villager
tower?
kills.
Because like I legit am convinced he's just not producing out of it. Okay,
Now,
Yeah.
now he does.
so he's queued up crossbows, but like think about how many spearmen he would have had defending by now had he been producing out of that double racks when that assault came in.
That's a lot of torching power, KP. This DC could go down very, very quickly if CSO doesn't fight this.
I think he can fight it quick enough. I mean, Baltune, he could just commit the torches right now. I think that's the best way to approach this. Just get the TC kill and open the floodgates a bit. King frontline.
And his javelins are slowly picking off the villagers on the backline as well. This is essentially the entirety of CSO's food eco, by the way. A bunch of farms, berries as well,
Knock,
and a
knock.
DC is going to go down.
CSO all of a sudden doesn't have a choke point that he can stand in, that he won't be overwhelmed, so he has to back off entirely. Baltune, meanwhile, happy with the result. He's now prepping the traps, so White Tower next on the hit list, and CSO's plan is starting to unravel here.
And now with this DC gone, that left side is quite unprotected. A lot of that farming eco is exposed on CSO's side, whereas for Baltune, his own eco is as safe as it possibly gets.
Bloody hell. Imported armor's now only on the way, 15 sofas in.
Yeah, it's very late for Baltune, but it just goes to show how good his position is. He took those fights without imported armor and still prevailed.
Yeah, we have at least got Armorclad coming in on the other side for CSO, but the problem is the Musafadi already there. It's already a little bit of a bind. Yes, you have at least made yourself more tanky, you've got great DPS, but you're up against 2 units that fundamentally counter men-at-arms.
He's going very heavy on Spearmen as well, which is, I mean, it might be somewhat competitive against the Musafadi warriors. The concern is that Spearman is just not a good unit to mass produce. It's not something that you want as the backbone of your army.
We've been seeing a lot for the English at the moment. I mean, the real goal is meant to be mass men-at-arms, but I guess it's the Musafadi detail, right? Like, this is where Malians kind of force you off the atypical script. As most English games tend to just blob men-at-arms now and then go imp and then overwhelm with their beefy boys.
Clad armor is just now coming in for CSO, by the way, and he is also getting veterancy for longbows, despite only having a single longbowman out on the field and no more queued.
Yeah, he's prepping that now, though. I mean, it makes sense against Musafadi. It's literally his best answer. So the logic here is basically going to be longbow spears, which is why it's important CSO doesn't lose that white tower too quickly. Otherwise, you won't really have the wood for that type of play.
He's also taking his front gold, which I actually like quite a lot, because this is probably the most exposed gold pile. He's taking it while he still can, but that also means that he's got some backups all the way back.
I'm wondering, have we got outposts on that south side from CSO? Because when I see this many Musafadi, I just think stealth.
He's got to keep.
White Towers?
You could, if you're Baltune, you could really think about some combat ships harassing the back of CSO's eco now. He's confined into his own base, and he's just so deprived of space.
I don't think you need it. You need to force him off the center first, right? Like, this is what CSO is coveting right now. The gold, the wood in this area, but now with White Tower about to crumble, he's going to have to back up.
Yeah, he's going to try to go Imperial with Berkshire, though.
With Trebs already set up, though, if he sees you do this, if he gets a whiff of this...
Oh, he doesn't see it, but he might just get a glimpse of that if he breaks through the walls quickly enough. He
sees
caught
it.
a glimpse of that.
Trebs one pack in. CSO, it's a mistake. The shots come in.
Oh no, KB, that could be a disaster. He's pulling 30 villagers to build this.
He needs more. He needs to pull 40. Otherwise, that thing is going up and then immediately down. Check that health bar.
It's gonna be finished though, KB, but it won't be very long-lived. He's gonna have to commit villagers to repair this. I think he needs to ungarrison and repair.
It's dead. It's actually going to crumble from this.
Oh, next volley is gonna finish it. There's just not enough repair power.
Reload's coming in. It's going to be tight, maybe on the very edge, but I think that's confirmation. Berkshire is down. CSO outnumbered and now clearly outgunned.
Oh, that's just terrible for CSO here. He's trying to repair that Berkshire back, but it takes so much wood and so much time to finish it. And the traps can take it out once again. His army is holding, but that Berkshire is no longer shooting. As long as you don't reconstruct that landmark fully, it's not going to shoot. It's completely useless right now.
And I don't see how you're ever going to be able to reconstruct. I mean, you know, I know why they call it Berkshire right now, because that is absolute dog. I think that might be the most underwhelming Berkshire attempt I've ever seen in my life.
Talk about little details, KP. Just catching a glimpse of that landmark is so valuable here for Baltune as CSO does step out.
Love the end, just Baltune's like, here, this is how you build a keep. What a dominant show in there, Baltune. Second game in a row now to put himself on match point early here. CSO, it's slipping and it's slipping fast, man. I warned that Baltune was going to impress a lot of people in this tournament, and I think we're finally starting to wake up to that because this is peak Scandinavian performance.
I think the worrisome detail for CSO is that he's losing games, and he's doing so despite having pretty good positions in these games. It's not a matter of, hey, my early game just fell apart, or I slipped up, lost the battle, that was it. He lost game number 1 despite having 4 relics, had 3 sacred sites for a long time with Delhi. His position was reasonable in this game as well, but he lost both of these games, and you start to wonder what will happen if he ends up being on the back foot after like 10 minutes or so.
Could this be the one where CSO pulls a point back? Japanese on Kawasan. A strong pick, a decent pick. But Baltune, I thought maybe he was going to be saving this for Hillendale as a possibility, but no. On match point, he's pulling HRE out now.
Interesting idea. He's got Mongols, Jushi, and French left. Jushi feels like a reasonable pick for migration. And that would leave Mongols probably for Hillendale. On the opposing side, you still have Jeanne d'Arc and the Ottomans, and of course the Abbasids, which is still a dark flag, and I always miss that as a consequence. I don't know, KP. I feel like the concern here for CSO is that you still have Jushi for migration, which is an extremely powerful civilization on those water maps.
Against the Bastards as well, right? Like, that should be the most likely outcome, unless he throws a curveball like Jaume, perhaps, which leaves Ottomans up against French. Or Ottomans, Mongols? Mongols seems more likely, right, for the trade.
Yep.
So, in that game, maybe CSO has an option of trying to play greedy and just teching up, because I don't think Mongols play well into Castle Plus, because Janissaries come into the picture. But yeah, I mean, there's a big question mark on whether we're even going to get that deep. Don't mind us, guys. We're just checking that our lights work. We have got pitch black lights. That's very good. But the interesting one here is like HRE, they have a lot of potency now in Dark Age. And I'm wondering if that's the goal here from Baltune is let CSO place a dock, burn it down, right? You'd think that's a bad idea, massing spears against a civ that has Onabagisha, but if you don't have the economy behind it, Onabagisha are terrible in Feudal Age.
Yeah, Onabagisha in general is a unit that it's not meant to survive. It's your glass cannon style unit. It's good with swarms, it's good with the DPS, but you need to have that economy to mass produce it. But before we get in there, KP, I just want to highlight that CSO needs to win for us to see migration. Otherwise, we're just going to skip that map and go for the next series.
But I just want to cast one gamer, like yeah, I don't know, man. Migration is a really fun map. I was saying, like, before on my stream when I was casting a few scrims, I like the idea of what would this map be like if you put a canal down the center as well, right? So you had that kind of more fluid dynamic to break in, break out, make it shallow water so you can still play both sides. Kind of like canal and migration have a baby. I wonder if that would be someone that players engage with more, because I think the only single negative I could give migration is there's so much fish that it inevitably becomes a full water map instead of it just being this kind of, hey, it's about the land, it's about the center island. It's just a delayed arrival there, which seems like a much cooler concept.
Yeah, we still have a minute to go, KP, until this set or until this game begins, I should say. So I think this is a good time to take a look at the remainder of the schedule for today, though, because this is only the first of 4 sets that we're going to witness today. Up next is going to be Vortex versus Recon, which is also an elimination match from Group C. And then we're going to conclude the day with 2 winners matches, an absolute banger between 2 undefeated players, Puppy Paw and Anatant, and then, of course, Lucifron versus Wham, the winners match from Group D.
Yeah, and I think people will be very surprised by the outcome of the Vortex Recon game. I mean, Vortex, we haven't been seeing the best AOE IV round at the moment. On top of that, I think Recon has some very cool experiments he's been undertaking. That series potentially ends up like the Dumu Cat one yesterday, by the way, considering that Recon has been scrimming up with Dumu a fair amount. But I'll hold my breath. Maybe we don't get the absurdity there. But considering the way that Recon's been evolving his playstyle to not just be defensive, it would be intriguing to see how far he's come as an aggro player against the person that quite often gets dubbed the king of aggression.
But well, first we need to conclude this series Baltune with a 2-0 lead over CSO as we're heading into Kawasan.
Could be the last game in Master of Realms for CSO because nothing but perfection will get him through. It's actually Baltune who is on match point in this best of 5. And with HRE on Kawasan, I'm curious to see if we're going to get that full Dark Age aggression.
Well, Baltune picking the northern pond as his pond of choice. And it looks like we're going to have a shared pond here, KP, which is always the first thing to look at when you look at a Kawasan game. Are the players splitting pawns in Dark Age, or are they going to share pawns? And with the two players sharing pawns, you can expect a lot of early Feudal Age combat and also race towards Feudal Age, because getting that first galley out to start picking off enemy fishing boats, it's immensely valuable.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting here is, like, normally we'd highlight the fact that Japanese have cheaper fishing boats, right? They pay substantially less. They pay 30 wood less per. But I think the interesting thing that kind of mirrors that out is the H3 gathering rate buff, right? Like 7 villages juiced up by 40% does allow you to kind of make up for the fact that you're not getting that discount. I'm wondering though, does all that wood simply go into fishing boats, or is there possibly about that idea of a racks drop here, right? Because Spearman could prove quite effective at just denying these docks out.
I think it also gives you a bunch of extra flexibility because you don't need that many villagers to mass produce your fishing boats. And I think that could allow you to be a little bit more flexible with your villager distribution, add 1 or 2 more on sheep or gold, and just allow you to potentially be a little quicker to Feudal Age.
And it is. There you go. Rax gets dropped. Confirmation. Baltune is going for the Dark Age aggro. so this is kind of cool, right? Because you'd think this would be bad because Japanese can get Koka Township and Shinobi, they should be able to beat Spears, right? But the problem is usually Shinobi can beat Spears by kind of microing away from them with the extra movement speed. You don't have a movement speed advantage when you're up against Dark Age H3 Spears.
I mean, there's a bigger problem, KP. Shinobi still are a long way from here. Like, you need to finish the landmark, and he hasn't even started aging up, and this is something that's very characteristic of hybrid maps. When you build a dock and when you start fishing, you delay your Feudal Age uptime compared to a standard land map like Dry Arabia, for instance. So these spearmen will have a lot of time to burn down these docks, and this is actually a very interesting strategy by Baltune, and I kind of like it. As you said, you get a massive amount of extra wood influx from the HRE getter rate buff. And this allows you to play into Spearmen, but also make sure that you don't expose your economy very, very heavily. Other civs, if you try doing this with them, your economy would be very feeble in Dark Age.
Yeah, and I have to wonder, this second dock coming in from CSO, is this the right move? Because you're kind of compounding the issue, right? You mentioned the Shinobi far away. This is going to make them feel even further off.
CSO is trying to rush Feudal Age here. You can actually see on the food and gold count that he has. Compare that to Baltune's. He's really trying to make it to Feudal Age here. He's just trying to essentially keep his fishing eco alive for the time being. But let's not forget one thing, especially with this dock having been found immediately. Well, Baltune, yeah, he wasn't looking, but he now sees the dock. Still, one thing to consider here is that by making another dock, you already made this Spearman investment a lot more worthwhile, because it's not just Baltune investing resources into that barracks, it's also CSO having to spend a bunch of wood on a new dock.
The kind of funky thing here is actually, I'm wondering what Baltune Scout was doing. Was he running out of sheep at home? Because he could have easily been scouting out for that second dock drop, right? I wonder if he was checking the other pond. It looks like there was a sheep drop-off, because just a moment ago, we actually had 1 villager on food and 12 on wood. So there was a little bit of weird dynamic happening behind this. I think maybe the scout just kind of locked out, but he still might be quick enough to deny both these docks before CSO can man a defense.
Yeah, Koka Township is still just halfway completed. CSO also lost a villager, by the way. He did lose the villager that built the new dock, and well, I mean, this is a big investment from Baltune, 6 spearmen as well. So even a single Shinobi isn't going to make it happen, and it's 9 villagers KP from CSO. This is kind of an emergency build-up of that landmark from him. He's trying to rush it up so he can get the first couple of Shinobi out.
Yeah, but Baltune, I think sending the scout home is a mistake here, because the other dock isn't completely denied yet. Okay, he did send an extra spear. It's really important both these docks go down at around the same time. Otherwise, he would just get swamped. Archer ship on the way out. Tech up complete.
That's going to be tight.
Yeah, I think genuinely he could have had at least another 100 damage in here if the scout had stayed around hitting this building the whole time. And that would have been the difference between getting this on fire and potentially being short.
Yeah,
Baltune.
he's gonna get it on fire, but he's not gonna be able to take it out before the galley comes out.
He actually has to commit because there's a villager coming out now. So like if he walks away with his archer ship showing, he's just going to come in and repair. So really smart play there by Baltune. He understands that. He's like, I know these guys are probably going to die, but realistically, what use do I have for Spearman past this point in this matchup?
Yep. He was dancing around as well, trying to buy time for the flames to just engulf that dock and finish it off. And oh, this could be terrible. The galley's so far away.
And the Shinobi's not here yet. He's on his way. Shunshin in to try to get there quicker. CSoH? No.
He's chilling.
He's distracted right now.
Oh, he could lose that Vil.
He's definitely going to lose that Vil. It's free Spearman. Like, there's no denying this. One stab from each and he's dead.
Oh, that's so bad. That is insane value for Baltune. He loses his spears, but let's not forget, he's up to Feudal Age as well. He now has his own galley coming out. Could have gone for a Hawk as a response to that galley, but he already did so much damage to his opponent.
Yeah, mistake made there by Baltune. Shunshin was on cooldown, right? He could have actually short-walled right there where he was fishing, and that would have bought enough time for the first archer ship to come out. So a little bit of a mistake there. Means there is going to be some dock denial, but it's not going to be permanent, remember. You need double Shinobi for that, and CSoH is still only on one.
Yeah, and that dock is like 90% complete with the galley. So if you don't permanently deny the ship production, he's going to have that galley out.
Well, looks like the dock should be being complete, right?
Yep.
Did CSoH pull another villager for it? Yeah, he did. And he's going double pond.
Yeah, the galley is going to pop out for Baltune, though. Baltune is doubling down on this right-hand side pond, by the way. Needed to pull the villager to keep it alive because the galley found the dock.
Yeah, and the Shinobi's nearby. I'm kind of surprised the archer ship isn't moving up towards that, because that's the more imminent threat here.
Agreed. I think you need to snipe that Shinobi. Fishing boats are now being targeted down here as well. Baltune is running for his life with that Will, by the way. It's going all the way to the north.
It's like, just pretend you're a tree. Pretend you're a tree. He's not falling for it. All right, so... well, we didn't want vision anyway, boys. Oh, dude, these wolves have been working overtime. First the Japanese villager, and now the German villager.
But I honestly like this for Baltune. I think he realized that he cannot save that villager, but he's actually pulling that Shinobi all the way to the north, and this is going to buy so much time for him. And the galley was gone from CSoH, so he's got no tools to snipe that demo with.
Yeah, but also that was not ideal from Baltune. The detonation before injuring the fishing boat. So Spruan ship is going to stay alive. He could snipe the villager here. I think that's actually what he's aiming for. Yes, CSoH.
It's still good value, though. He's killing fishing boats. He's pushing away the villager. Ecos are still neck and neck, but let's not forget he does have the HRE buff here. I would have loved the second demo, though. He actually queued a galley instead of playing a demo here. And let's not forget, he actually had to cancel this dock here, so it's one dock versus one dock right now.
Yeah, but there's going to be a party in the South Lake. Because right now, Baltune, I think he's got the dock up. Okay, it's going to be on the way soon. So he's sneaking all the way around, and if you look, CSoH is patrolling the East Coast. There's an opportunity for Baltune to maybe thread this just out of vision.
Yeah, there's a second demo as well, but of course, when you have such a tight bond, you have to first get rid of the enemy arrow ship.
Ooh.
Otherwise, that demo is going to get sniped out. And you can actually see CSoH holding his own demo back, waiting for that galley to go down before committing it.
That's going to be a hard reach for that, though. Second dock is about to come online. Demo's at least probing. And that dock is coming up. CSoH, he hasn't noticed yet. He's so distracted microing this. He just got that boat on patrol. But if it's on patrol, is it going to hunt in time?
Ooh, nice find by CSoH, though. And this is so crucial. This is CSoH spawn, uncontested. And on the other pond, CSoH is also winning this battle.
Fishing boat being pulled to try and keep this round up. But now the dive comes in on the galley. Baltune could be pushed off this pond in a matter of moments.
Yep. He's got one more ship ready to pop out. He's actually housed. He's housed. That's why he doesn't have either of those two ships popping out.
Look at this. Surprise, Mother Ducker. They're out. Archer ship, just in the nick of time. Is going to be quick enough. Yes. Keeps this round alive. Does cost him the fishing boat, though.
Yeah, but he's going to get rid of the enemy galley and the fishing boat as well. And that's huge, because now he can go for the demos.
Double demo.
2 more demos coming in, and it's only one dock for CSoH. He does have a gal. Actually, no, it's not a
That
galley.
village is injured. That village is gone. And now the Spiral ships can be targeted down. Baltune looking to take control of the east side lake.
This was so huge. If that was a galley from CSoH, he could have sniped the demos, but he decided to go for another war chunk. And because of that, he had no tools to deal with these demos. Villager goes down, the ships go down, and in just a matter of moments, Baltune secures that right-hand side pond.
Yeah, and Baltune, here's the other thing. He should have had some Shinobi issues. CSoH just realized a mistake, right? That ninja was standing there for a very long time, doing nothing. He was on paid leave. All of a sudden, he's back in the picture, but at this stage, with how far you are behind on this eastern lake, I don't think you can try to reclaim it. If anything, you probably just have to try and maybe poke at the land eco with the ninjas.
Yeah, it's tough, especially because now Baltune is contesting the left-hand side pond, but Baltune himself is having food issues. He has to actually add farms over here. At least he does have double broad axe, so his wood income is pretty remarkable. But his food eco isn't looking very shiny, KP.
No, love this though from CSoH. Arislets, just something you inherently get by gathering the gold, right? So nice little play there to try and at least be annoying. Because right now, I think CSoH's goal is to delay Baltune. It's starting to feel like we're getting ready for a macro up for Japanese castle.
Yeah, I would love that, considering that Baltune's food eco isn't too shiny. Let's not forget, CSoH does have a respectable fishing eco on this left-hand side pond, and it looks like Baltune wasn't able to put pressure on this pond. And with this galley patrolling the shoreline, it's unlikely that he will even be able to. So as long as CSoH is contesting this spawn and harassing these fishing boats, Baltune's food eco should be weaker.
Ship still somehow alive. Mountain Sails was already activated. That's dangerous. Because now the demo can actually cut you. Some fishing boats are at least being targeted as well, so some value on the side. Wait.
Demo got body blocked by the fishing boats.
It should still be... No, it's like that. Archer ships here. Baltune isn't really falling for this, though. Check the food. Check the gold. He understands where this game is trending, because if it was all about feudal still, CSoH would have tried to sneak another dock.
And a galley goes down with the demo potentially taking out that war chunk. Shinobi does show up at the gold mine to get some kills, though, as it looks like the demos will just trade the ballista ships.
Wow, and GG gets called. We are going to have a game 4.
Oh my. It was a weird game for CSoH. He did what he needed, but it wasn't a very clean game from him. There were some slip-ups. But one thing is sure, KP, at least he was able to constantly contest the spawn from Baltune, whereas Baltune never really was able to contest that fishing eco on the left-hand side pawn. Ultimately, CSoH grinds down Baltune, and indeed, this takes us to game number 4. CSoH is not done just yet.
No, and the real big decisive moment there, for anyone wondering, was that a bit quick GG? Why would you GG that fast? It's the Shinobi on the goal. The moment he saw the Shinobi in the goal, because the goal there for the HRE is to get Castle Age. That's your out. But the problem there is he's already prepped stables, so he can build horsemen against Shinobi. That's terrible. He can't now go into archers because he's putting all of his wood now into farms as well as additional boats. So you're kind of in a catch-22 there. On top of that, you understand that Japanese are holding resources for castle. That's the win condition there. So that's why he GG's out in the end. If people thought it was like a little bit too quick, trust me, it wasn't. Like that game would have been over in the next 5 minutes. So next up, we head to Hill and Dale. They really, really want to make it hard for me to see migration. But Abbasids might be a civ that can get us there. I think this is a civ that has a lot of flexibility in terms of options, right? Military wing's still very popular. Eco wing is actually quite desirable in Hill and Dale, but also trade wing is viable considering those corner trade post locations.
This also means, KP, that if CSoH ends up winning this game, the decider would be on Migration, a rather unexplored map in the context of this event. So that would definitely be a map that's difficult to predict in general. But first, we have a more classic matchup here on Hill and Dale. Mongols, of course, always a danger here. They do have the potential to trade. They do have the potential to put early pressure on you. The thing I always feel weird about the Mongols on this map, though, is the fact that they cannot wall, which just makes them very weird on a closed map. Once they lose the initiative, it's just so difficult to protect your flanks compared to any other civilization.
Yeah, and it's like you're going to end up, what, trending into Keshix against the Civ that has superior spears, has access to camels. There's a lot of kind of big question marks on how Mongol Boy functions here. So I'm wondering, does Baltune just come out the door swinging? Does he try to go for some early outpost rush shenanigans to stabilize himself? Is that worth it, considering that you will have 4 units to build up a ram with? It might at least keep CSO honest, because I feel like if you don't aggro the Abbasids here, they can easily and freely go either eco wing or trade wing. At which point, I don't think even Silver Tree can really contest that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about, KP. I feel like one thing I like about the Abbasids here is that if the Mongol player tries to trade, you can do that too, but you can also wall up, which makes it much more difficult for them to pressure your trade. If the Mongol player plays aggressive, the Abbasids in general are decent defensive civilizations. So this is definitely a tough matchup here for the Mongols. One thing that could be interesting though is how Baltune could use Keshix potentially. Just try to put some early pressure on the opponent, maybe play that semi-fast castle approach. And we've actually seen a lot of Kuro type builds recently with the Mongols. It's not something that I consider out of this world for this game either.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking at as well is like the idea that if you go Keshix, I wonder if just Camel Archer or with Mass Horseman could suffice. Because you could pay like a decent margin there. Like, you spend 120 resource compared to 200. And normally you'd favor Keshix in the long fight because the lifesteal, the damage, but the debuff is substantial there. So there's definitely options on the table here for the Abbasids. The scary part to me is if this goes game 5, right? Because like, what does CSO have there? Because I thought the plan was Ottomans here so that you had Abbasids for migration.
This is such a weird setup indeed. I feel like at this point, CSO doesn't get concerned about that. He's just sitting there saying, listen, I first have to get to game number 5. But yeah, I feel like we could see some Ottomans being played here. We've actually seen Demu play Ottomans yesterday on Archipelago, I do believe. Alternative would be Jeanne d'Arc. I could see this being a Jeanne d'Arc game. It would be a very awkward one.
I mean,
maybe you could make an argument for using Jeanne d'Arc as your kind of land control unit, just quickly landing it on the central island and just trying to prevent your opponent from establishing a foothold. But one thing is sure, whichever 2 of those civilizations CSO ends up using on game number 5, if we get there, I consider them weaker than Baltune's Jushis that's still available.
Yeah, that's the problem for me. I mean, there's no way Baltune's picking French there. This man hasn't lost his marbles. All right, they seem to be in order. So I kind of like the idea to some extent of Jeanne as this kind of farming unit almost. And what I mean by that is when you get these water fights, like it's a lot of resources per unit, right? And when you have range zones, you can very easily snipe them down. But this isn't the map for her. I imagine that strategy works a lot better on maps like, for example, Canal. This is a much more pure migration. Same logic. If we're playing Archipelago, I'd be shocked at a Jeanne pick because I just don't know how you're ever meant to get XP with that.
Well, we just have 30 seconds left to go here, KP. Once again, this is the first time that these 2 players have met in a competitive set, and Baltune is having the upper hand right now, leading 2-1. The winner of this set is going to face off against the loser of Wham versus Lucifron, and the loser of this set is going to be out of the tournament. So for CSO, he's going to have to win 2 games straight. Otherwise, he's going to say goodbye to Masters of Realms.
And that is the thing to emphasize here. The reason the suit jacket is on is out of respect because someone is about to need a funeral here. This series, whoever loses, that's it. Master Realms is over. No chance to get the lion's share of that $25,000 prize pool. Can CSO keep his hopes alive? Can he give China a good shot? Can he give Asia a good shot? Because so far, it's been Louis, the only one able to sort of step up to the mark. What we've been seeing more frequently has been European dominance. And might be what we see here in game number 4.
A big classic map that we're heading into, KP. It is Hillandale, and we have CSO facing off against Baltune. Besides Dry Arabia, KP, I think this is probably the longest tenured competitive map that we still have. It has been there since the very beginnings of competitive AOE IV, since the very first tournament, Genesis. In fact, it was one of the most picked maps in that tournament. It's still with us, and we're going to see a Mongols versus Abbasid matchup here, KP.
Yeah, thinking back to the fact that we picked this as a majority map, I have to ask the question, what's wrong with us? I mean, Lipany, I understand more, right? I feel like Lipany actually kind of fits the notion more. I don't know about you, the more I've been seeing Hillandale on this tournament. It's like, it's nice to see it come back every once in a while. I can't wait for it to be gone again, though. It's it's just one of those maps, man. I think, like, the interesting thing is, even on Dry Arabia, you still see some very kind of different strategies. Hillendale, very much because the defensive orientation forces a particular style that's hard to get away from. But obviously, whenever you see Mongols, you can at least have a smile on your face, because one of these civs can't play into that turtley style.
Well, it's going to be a Rax opening here, immediately scouted by CSO, so he knows exactly what's coming his way. And this barracks is also at the back of Baltune's base, so it extends the time it takes for Baltune to reach the enemy base from that barracks. CSO, he's going to be on the way to Feudal Age by the time those spearmen arrive.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the spawn right now, noticing a big problem here. Look at where the trade post spawns. It's not a corner spawn, so if Mongols do have to play trade, they're going to be wearing their strategy on their sleeve here. Oh, that's really bad. Especially for the mid game, right? Because in the mid game, you know, it's not like you can traffic your trade safely. I mean, there is a chance, maybe, because here's the thing. Pathing in this game, I don't know if you know this, Lidicor, but pathfinding in Age of Empires 4, it's more Gamba than the Gamba wing of the Ibids. There is a chance that if he puts a silver tree in the southern corner, the traders will walk to the east side of the cliff instead of the west. We'll have to see if we get that deep, though. Spearman coming in. And, you know, I said that I wasn't sure if this was a play even worth it, right? Because the problem, it makes a lot of sense against a lot of civs, but against the Bastards with Military Wing, remember, they do already have Siege Engineering, so they don't need to worry about gold to counter this play.
Yep, that's a big thing here. In general, the fact that these spearmen arrive only after Feudal Age was triggered is in itself okay for CSO. He doesn't need to worry about it. And this is a very much back tower. Although, come to think of it, it's actually going to tower the stone here. So Baltune is playing to just prevent the 2TC build here from CSO.
And that's where we trade now. Okay, so this isn't too bad, but, like, once again, it doesn't really stop it, does it? Because I'm going to have 4 units to build a ram with. There are some civs, you know how there's just some civs you just shouldn't really outpost rush? English is king amongst them. Like, if you're trying to outpost rush in English, you don't need to look further as to why you're probably, like, you know, stuck in silver at the moment. But, like, the other one that's up there for me is the Bastards. Like, you do at least force a 200 wood investment, but you yourself have spent quite a lot on this play, haven't you? You spent 100 wood on the outpost. You spent the idle time of this villager, which is definitely eclipsing an extra 100. And then on top of that, you've built all these spears.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about KP as well. It's one of those things where, sure enough, you do some damage on your opponent, but I mean, if CSO plays this well, aging up with the military wing, getting the archer and spearman, getting that ram out, it essentially means, especially with these spearmen taking a big amount of damage from the town center, it pretty much means that your best case scenario is an equal trade. It's going to be a silver 3 game for Baltune, and at least for the time being, CSO's attention is going to be focused around that tower. But once that tower is gone, especially considering that it only has 2 spearmen garrisoned inside, CSO's attention is going to start focusing on Baltune himself.
So maybe, like, the positive of this, at least for Baltune, is because now CSO is invested in the RAM, he hasn't been building the stables, right? Because, like, the biggest fear you now have when you set up Silver Tree is that your opponent's doing stables because they have all 3 unit types and they can block trade. So, like, I guess you could argue this does delay the aggressive play of CSO, which might end up favoring Baltune, but, like, we haven't even got the Silver Tree yet, let alone have it in position.
Yeah, that's my problem as well. And Spearman will be repulsed. You see, CSO was delayed a little, but not by a massive margin. In fact, he is going to have that second town center up by the time you start getting your traders out, pretty much. Yeah. Scout is actually being attacked by the Spearman over there. CSO needs to be careful with that.
But once again, think about the logic here, right? It's like CSO isn't now building a stables. Because if he builds the stables, his timing is off for a second TC. It's like, this... It looks weird because it's like, this doesn't seem like a worthwhile trade. But if it allows Baltune to freely start up the trade without having to worry about horsemen, then it's not the worst choice in the world.
Yeah, I feel like this is just a matter of this is the best option for Baltune. It might not be the most optimal option available in the game, but in this particular Civ matchup, this is the best thing he can do to drag attention away from the fact that he's setting up trade.
To put it in other simplistic words, Lidicor, it's the equivalent of going, why is Baltune doing this, dude? Just pick Rus, right? And you're like, bruh, the Roost got banned. Right? There's limitations, there's lock-ins. Like, when you're stuck in this matchup, I mean, I think Baltune kind of accepted this was going to happen, right? Like, what were the alternatives shown? I think the only one that maybe he was considering was Ottomans. But as we mentioned already, with the way this draft has gone, because now CSO chose to pick Abbas's here instead of Ottomans, his 5th map is incredibly weak.
CSoH is moving all the way to the south over here as we have a stable coming in here for Baltune. He's starting to set some Kashik production up. Second TC is going to be very, very tight here for CSO. Now, usually you want to expand towards an extra source of food with your TC, but Hillandale is special from, or in a sense that your first deer pack spawns very close to your initial TC, so you can play very tight and condensed and just push in that deer pack to your second TC, or even your starting TC depending on the exact location. And I don't know, KP, but I see a lot of food being piled up here by CSO. Could you envision a semi-fast Castle here? Just saying, listen, I don't want to boom a lot because I think CSO knows fully well that this is a trade game from Baltune.
I mean, you can, right? Like, you know, this is one of those examples where sometimes it would have felt better if you could have got away with going melee wing second, because Camel Riders are perfect for Geshiks. But, you know, your economy is decent enough to kind of flex against Mongols when they're setting up trade. But I love that Baltune isn't just rushing the grid, right? Like, I think we've got one trader out so far, but now he's going into the archers. So he's looking to just apply pressure and force investment. And right now, CSO has kind of revealed his hand, right? Like, this outpost tells him everything he needs to know about the Abbasids.
And this is a problem for CSO. The timing on these Kashik are great. They are pushing CSO away from gold, and you can actually see CSO is piling up a lot of food, but he's deprived of gold, and he doesn't have a fallback option. On Hillandale, you only spawn with one gold mine that's reasonably close to you. If this was Dry Arabia, he could try to sneak out to a backup gold mine, but that's not the case over here, and just look at this. There is going to be a barracks forced out of CSO, there is a range as well, and Baltune is doubling down on this with archers. He's realizing that gold is the weakness of CSO right now.
Yeah, one thing I'm not liking here is CSO has his scout at home. So, like, he's kind of blind punting onto what he's up against here, right? Because I feel like the Camel Archer doesn't... It's not going to be able to stand for very long, right? With the Archer count kind of scaling as it is, Keshi count's also looking nice right now. I think Baltune, if you're going to rush up to, like, 15 Archers, this Camel detail just starts to feel like a waste, not a benefit.
And let's not forget, as long as Baltune is fighting inside the enemy base, he's going to be more than happy with his trade. In fact, he needs to feel very happy about the fact that CSO made all production buildings except for a stable. So he's going to be without substantial mobility to harass those traders with. And at the end of the day, Baltune just needs to posture here to make sure that his own trade is thriving while CSO is cut off from gold.
Poke on that Camel now. Another beautiful thing about playing the Mongols, right? He's just getting free shots on the opening over the tree line, courtesy of the Falcon.
That Falcon is just used so well by Baltune, by the way. Like, it provides that shared line of sight, and it allows him to shoot over the wood line, start picking off villagers, start picking off some archers as well. And look at that, just villagers getting picked off and harassed is not a thing that CSO wants to have in a match point game.
Yeah, it's tough as well, because, you know, the moment you return fire, he can just stop firing. And in this type of quantity, it means you're never going to get that kill on the low HP Archer, right? So you can just come in and get that initial hit that always puts him ahead. And we mentioned this, that the Camel Archer was quickly going to lose value in this game. We're seeing that. Look at the Archer count right now. Baltune even double producing to reach that critical number. I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at Blacksmith's play in the next minute and a half max.
And this is looking so grim for CSO. He's got 900 food, but no wood, no gold. He simply cannot spend that food because he's missing all the other resources. He's just now grabbing Wheelbarrow. Compare that to Baltune, who already has a Wheelbarrow. He's got double Broadaxe, and he's now getting Blacksmith upgrades as well.
And that's important. That's really important because the gold starvation detail you mentioned. Like, Litter, he can completely lose this fight in one easy punch. If Baltune just gets Stilled Arrow and Undermesh in a rush, CSO's in trouble. And he's revealing how dangerous it is. Marketplace on the backside, simply to sell wood off and food to get gold. Even then, it's not a Blacksmith play, it's to get Ecotechs.
And selling all the valuable food is just going to put you into an even deeper hole. Let's not forget, he's got a finite amount of food inside his base. He's depleting those deer carcasses, he's depleting the berries, the sheep. At some point, this is going to flip, and sure enough, you buffer things up. You get your techs now that you sold all your food. But you're running out of food inside your base as well.
Surely Undermesh is worth more than Boot Camp here. I'm kind of confused by this, because I feel like you get more effective HP on your comp out of Undermesh instead.
I don't think he has a Blacksmith. He might not even have the wood for a blacksmith.
I mean, he definitely has the wood for a blacksmith. He should definitely be building a blacksmith right now. Like, you know, you can see Steeled Arrow. You now
Well, yeah,
know
he
you're
just
behind.
not finished it.
I'm getting a bad feeling here.
It's gonna be way too late, KP. I mean, the gold mine is burning now. A lot of these archers are also damaged. Villagers are getting picked off. And Baltune is now taking this fight. I think he's realizing that he does have the tech that his opponent does not.
He hasn't got Undermesh yet, right? But, like, Steeled Arrow's on the way, so he probably feels like he has to take the strike now. But that was kind of dangerous, right? Because you've got Steeled Arrow, but your opponent has Boot Camp to offset some of that effect, and it's Defender's Advantage. So Baltune says, okay, if I'm not willing to send the Keshiks in, I probably shouldn't be here in the first place.
I mean, he's still happy about this, if you think about it. He's got a completely untouched trade going on, and CSO has no access to gold. And let's not forget, sure enough, CSO buffered this up by selling resources, but that also plummeted the market prices.
Yeah.
So now, CSO won't be able to do this again, at least not efficiently.
I remember that trade issue snowballs, right? As we get the Silk Road effect kicking in, 5, 10, 15, all of a sudden this eco lead is going to start to become apparent, even when they seem like they're even on the count.
And Blacksmith Tech's still in the favor of Baltune, and it looks like he might be thinking about falling back for the time being. But this is where it gets dangerous for CSO. If he starts moving out of his base, those Keshik could come online. So far, Baltune hasn't been using the Keshik much.
No. And the crazy part is CSO, he at least identified this, that he's underinvested in spears. With a mass archer army, 12 spears won't cut it, right? Against 11 Keshiks. It kind of feels bad when you know your unit's going to be counted, but if you don't go over the top of the spear count now, you have nothing to do with the heavy cav.
And CSO is desperate for food. You can actually see him walling to the far north. That is only to secure that berry patch. That's the only reason why this wall makes sense.
Yeah, he could probably go further as well because there's deer beyond that, right? Like, that gives him some longevity here. Now, I'd love to see Horsemen. Like, this is kind of crazy thing. I think CSO, I mentioned the Spearmen are good, but maybe Horsemen would work a lot better here now, considering your position. And you are playing a Civ that tends to get more food than your average Civ in AOE IV.
CSO also spotted the traders, so even if he didn't know up until this point, which is quite doubtful, now he has visual confirmation on the fact that his opponent is trading.
Speed Arrow, gonna dive in, and that's gonna push the Spearman back. The problem here is the Undermesh, though. The Undermesh being there means that CSO barely puts a dent in this. If Baltune can just force the commitment, Archer target down is good, CSO. The worry I'm having here is, are the spears gonna last long enough?
Yeah, that's the problem. And it's also not a good fight for CSO. Let's not forget, he is deprived of food. He almost depleted his entire wood line. So a fight where he loses food and wood-heavy units is not a good one for him.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. You see Baltune, it's almost like he's a fisherman right now. He just kept pulling him a little bit closer to the boat, right? But CSO's reached his threshold, his limitation. The scary part is if he's not willing to come out further, he understands the trade's going on, right? Like, at some point, you have to take a nibble to go and see what your opponent's up to.
He needs to go right now because Baltune is going to get up to Castle Age. It's like they're going to be a Coral tie, and he needs to take that fight before the Castle Age upgrades come in. The tricky detail is that once the Coral tie is up, it's difficult to fight into it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I always call it the Castle Age light effect, right? Immediately buffers you away. I mean, there is at least trade to target, so that could be a prime point.
This could be nasty. He sees the landmark.
Yeah, but can you dive in?
He needs to. I don't think he can hesitate. And yeah, Baltune.
Baltune has to back up. Krotai, way too aggressively located, but this is dangerous. He has now shown his hand.
Yeah, he had to bail. And if he loses that landmark, it's game over. Now he's going to have to lose a couple of traders, but at least he makes it up to Castle Age. And again, let's not forget CSO. He's going to have to fight this with a Feudal Age army against the Coral tie.
He's got an Uvu out as well. Frey's getting pinched. Baltune isn't even moving the other ones right now. So that's an attempt to cut some reinforcements. I mean, CSO knows this is coming, but this is the difficulty of playing at Bastards. You may notice he's adding a lot more Archer Spears because you can't just tech up now. If you tech up, you lose the game.
If this wasn't against the Coral tie, you would be fairly happy about it for CSO. But the problem is that once that Coral tie goes up, you immediately get that buff. And that just buys you a lot of time to get up to Castle Age and then get your upgrades.
Tech up complete. There it is, Sakura. The question now, can it actually pack up and move forward? Rams being built, CSO's all in.
He needs to be all in. And the Kurota is moving.
This is dangerous though. Like CSO, if he dives in to block it right now.
Yeah, that's dicey.
The pack up tech is still researching CSO. Just a little bit further, he blocks it.
Oh no, Baltune, that could be catastrophic.
Attack speed arrow gets activated though. Here we go. So still going to be a good trade from that perspective. CSO may have a numerical advantage, but it's not all here. And the Spearman just having to kind of camp on the back. The Kurotai, I mean, this is it. Baltune, he needs to dive into it to get the damage buff.
DC Fire's helping out so much here, KP, as well.
I think this is it. I don't think this works for CSO. Like, that's it. With the buff online, Keshix, they're going to bait the Spearman out of position. Archers have significant damage buff. And on top of that, Steeled Arrow level 2 is coming in.
Yeah, this got way too dicey for Baltune, but DC Fire combined with the numbers advantage and finally the Kurotai being set up is able to repel this assault. CSO wants to go to Castle Age himself, but with the Abyssids, it's just so difficult to get up quickly. And it's going to be challenging to even save this army at this point, KP.
Especially because of what Baltune done. He didn't prioritize vetting the archers. He vetted the Keshix instead. He even queued up Step Lancers. That was such a smart read, right? Archers may be able to win the defense, but Keshix can go and win the attack.
And Quarter Wing takes another 90 seconds to come in, not to mention the upgrades. And I think Baltune understands that now CSO is deprived of food. He needs to fight under these towers. Once again, the Kurotai does get blocked out, though.
Yeah, but he can't keep it blocked out here, right? Unpack's going to happen. He has got the Unpack tech, so it's much quicker now. Archer army is going to get completely wiped out. Yeah, I'm wondering, actually, considering there's no fire armor here, with the healing and the healing they get from attacking, Keshix could probably just camp here and take out the outposts.
Yeah, archers will dive deep, though. They're looking for those remaining archers. CSO is down to just 18 army here. He's going to have to go heavy into Gulam, but even then, it seems like an uphill battle for him.
It's got at least 500 gold to work with, right? So that's the good news. He got back on that gold for a little bit, but here you go. Outposts are starting to fail him here, especially with that damage buff now in.
He's going spears and archers. It's not a composition that's going to win against that.
Now, in theory, once you have composite bows, like you actually have a better damage than the archers of the Mongols, but you have to get that first.
A horrendous fight here again for CSO. These archers didn't even have veterancy for Baltune, by the way.
No, they still don't.
He completely wiped the floor with his opponent's army despite not having veterancy.
It was the +2 range damage in conjunction with the Kurotai buff. It's kind of wild it got eclipsed for so long, but it doesn't matter. It's never even going to see the day, a day before this game is over. A 3-1 scoreline. CSO's journey in Master of Realms ends here. Baltune keeps the dream alive.
CSO put up a good fight, but you really felt the difference between the two players, I feel, in this series. Baltune just was on top of so many things, and excluding the Kawasan game, he felt like the more comfortable player, the more convincing player, and he was able to capitalize on mistakes or small slip-ups that CSO committed. In the end, Baltune stays alive, and he is going to play a decider match next week.
Yeah, and that decider will, of course, be up against either Lucifron or Wham. We're not quite sure who that's going to be yet. If you are curious to that outcome for Group D, you'll have to tune in for our final series of this Sunday, where those two will be facing off. All I know, though, Baltune, man, these timings with these type of builds that definitely feel different to what we're seeing out of quite a few of the other players right now. You know, it's going to be, to a certain degree, it's going to feel like a little bit of a clash of ideologies and styles. I'm excited for either player being.